All right, so we heard from Stephen Miller in that little video there. Here's just an X comment from him. The alien terrorists from El Salvador will be jailed, sentenced, and incarcerated for the many grave crimes that have been uncovered, and then they will be deported back to El Salvador again. That seems likely. I have a video here, a statement by Carolyn Leavitt, press secretary for Trump. She writes, the Justice Department's grand jury indictment against Abrego-Garcia proves the unhinged Democrat Party was wrong, and their stenographers and the fake news media were once again played like fools. Abrego-Garcia was never an innocent Maryland man. Abrego-Garcia is an illegal alien terrorist, gang member, a human trafficker who has spent his entire life abusing innocent people, especially women and the most vulnerable. Abrego-Garcia will now return to the United States to answer for his crimes and meet the full force of American justice. The Democrat lawmakers, namely Democrat Senator Chris Von Hollen, this is the guy who went to El Salvador to meet with Abrego-Garcia, shook his hand, sat down at a table with margaritas. Did you know that in all 50 states, self-defense law, not gun law, but self-defense law, uses a simple 5-element test to see if your use of defensive force was legally justified? And that same test applies no matter what state you're in or what tool you use to defend yourself. If you're missing even one of those required elements, however, you've made yourself an easy conviction for an aggressive prosecutor. My name is Attorney Andrew Branca, and I've worked more than 30 years as a self-defense attorney. Every state has seemingly endless, complex pages of laws regarding self-defense, so complex that many top criminal defense attorneys rely on my expert analysis to help win self-defense cases for their clients. If the legal code is that complex for lawyers, how can a citizen gun owner expect to know or even follow the law, especially when a life or death situation has triggered a massive adrenaline-fueled mandate to make that fight or flight decision right now? It seems daunting. Yet I created a simple but powerful framework that has allowed me to serve the legal community and countless American gun owners to simplify this legal complexity into just 5 elements of self-defense law. And you can learn my 5-element legal algorithm I use to consult on and win with the top criminal defense attorneys all over the country to protect law-abiding gun-owning citizens from making innocent legal missteps that land them in prison. Now, with a simple read or listen, you can install my 5-point legal framework so it acts as a sort of muscle memory defense to protect you from losing your rights when you choose to defend innocent human life. Click below to get the latest edition of my book, The Law of Self-Defense Principles, for free. I ask only that you help cover the shipping and handling cost to get the book to you. Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen and every single so-called quote-unquote journalist who defended this illegal criminal abuser must immediately apologize to Garcia's victims. The Trump administration will continue to hold criminals accountable to the fullest extent of the law. And then we have a statement here from Pam Bondi. Let's see what she has to say about all this.
Abrego-Garcia has landed in the United States to face justice. On May 21st, a grand jury in the Middle District of Tennessee returned a sealed indictment charging Abrego-Garcia with alien smuggling and conspiracy to commit alien smuggling in violation of Title 8 U.S.C. 1324. We want to thank President Bukele for agreeing to return Abrego-Garcia to the United States. Our government presented El Salvador with an arrest warrant, and they agreed to return him to our country. We're grateful to President Bukele for agreeing to return him to our country to face these very serious charges. This is what American justice looks like. Upon completion of his sentence, we anticipate he will be returned to his home country of El Salvador. The grand jury found that over the past 9 years, Abrego-Garcia has played a significant role in an alien smuggling ring. They found this was his full-time job, not a contractor. He was a smuggler of humans and children and women. He made over 100 trips, the grand jury found, smuggling people throughout our country. MS-13 members, violent gang terrorist organization members throughout our country.
Let's take a look at some of the news coverage on that front. Move that over there.
USA Today, remember.
Here we go.
I opened the door and I was like, help. And then when he
So
heard
this
me,
is Abrego-Garcia's wife who went to criminal court because he was abusing her.
like he grabbed me from my hair and then he slapped me. I have pictures of the evidence, like all the bruises, because it's not, even on Wednesday, he hit me like around like 3 a.m. He would just wake up and like hit me. And then last Saturday for my daughter's birthday party, before I went to my daughter's birthday party, he slapped me 3 times. And then last week I did call the police. My sister called the police because he hit me in front of my sister.
Nice guy. When that audio resurfaced, his wife just brushed it off, said they weren't in a good place at the time and that he was traumatized after being in ICE detention during COVID. But of course, the Democrats, they wanted their hero home. Chris Van Hollen, as we just heard from Todd Blanche, practically, spooned with him today when he was brought back.
So here is Chris Van Hollen back when all this first happened. Chris Van Hollen is a Maryland, from the state, Maryland man, of course. That's where illegal migrant Abrego-Garcia was living and committing crimes for the last 14 years, even after having a final order of deportation 6 years ago. Here's Van Hollen shaking hands with spouse and child abuser and human trafficker and MS-13 terrorist member, our good friend Kilmar Armando Abrego-Garcia. And the Democrats now are struggling to kind of explain away their support for this monster, this illegal migrant criminal monster.
Though he, of course, is alleged to have committed these crimes. Do you think that Democrats risk politically playing into the president's hands by focusing on this case?
First of all, I don't know of a single Democrat who defended him specifically against any crimes, because he wasn't charged with any crimes. He doesn't have any criminal history, to my knowledge, or a criminal record, and there were no charges outstanding when he got unceremoniously picked up and flown out of the country. I mean, that's...
So do you need to have committed a crime to be deported if you're illegally present in the U.S.? Obviously not. Deportation is not a criminal process. It's a civil process. It's irrelevant whether someone has committed a crime for purposes of deportation. Of course, if you've committed a crime, that just accelerates your deportation. But you need not have committed any crime in order to be deported if you're not lawfully within the U.S.
called a disappearance. That's what happens in authoritarian societies. They obviously want to make this about whether or not he ends up being a good guy or a bad guy, but it's not a moral question. It's a legal question. And
legally, he had a final order of deportation for 6 years in his back pocket.
The constitutional question of whether the government can pick people up and take them out of the country. And I think
the government's allowed to deport you. If you're illegally present in the U.S., and you have a final order of deportation in your pocket, the government is allowed to deport you.
The court has been fairly emphatic about this. Due process is for everybody. Sometimes I hear my MAGA colleague.
I love this blanket due process claim, as if due process is this homogenous thing. They never define what due process is because, of course, they don't know what due process is. Due process simply means what the law requires. But what the law requires varies depending on the nature of the case, the person involved, the severity of the charge, whether it's a criminal or civil proceeding. Due process is malleable to the legal circumstances. So this guy got all the immigration due process to which he was entitled, all of that and more. He'd gotten it years ago, a final order of deportation. There was no more immigration due process. Now, of course, he's been criminally charged. So now he's entitled to the due process that comes with being a criminal defendant. But for purposes of his immigration, his deportation, his due process was over. Due process is not infinite. Due process is not you keep getting recourse until you get the answer you want. Due process is defined by the legal system. And this guy got all the due process to which he was entitled and more. And that's what led to his deportation.
They say, you're for due process for guilty people? Well, yeah, because we don't know if they're guilty or they're innocent until we've had due process.
Well, we knew he was subject to deportation because he had immigration due process and got a final order of deportation affirmed on appeal by the immigration courts.
That's the whole point of due process.
Though he, of course.
All right. Then we have the great Scott Jennings. Always great to watch. He's the token MAGA guy on a CNN panel show dealing with the wackos so we don't have to.
You all are completely downplaying.
I always love his stuff here. Here we go.
You all are completely downplaying what we know. We know plenty about this person.
What?
We know that he lived in the country illegally for 14 years. I know it's okay with you.
I said that.
That's
That's
number
not.
one.
We
We
know.
know.
Time
we
out.
know.
Time out. No.
We know.
That's
We know.
not. That is not okay
Why-
with me. But
why-
that's
why-
not.
why not
But that's not a.
Hold on,
But that
hold
is
on.
literally.
First of all, we all know that
the
you both
Supreme
interrupt
Court
each other all the
knows
time.
that is not a crime.
To live in
Stop-
the country illegally?
That's not a crime. That's a status offense. Stop telling people stuff that's
Okay.
not true.
I am just, my
Okay.
mind is so blown here.
Go ahead and
by
finish.
It's not a crime. It's a civil violation of immigration law, which makes you subject to forcible deportation.
the last 2 nights.
Scott,
with you about
It's
this
not a
illegal
criminal
immigration.
offense.
Bakari,
Can you-
just give. Can you
It's
give?
a civil violation.
Bakari, can we give Scott?
So
a-
Yes,
he's
but-
in the country illegally
Please.
14
Thank you.
years. That's number one. We also know what his wife told the courts and law enforcement about him.
Under
that he was
oath.
violent, that he beat her,
But he's not being charged with that.
that he
That's
was
hearsay.
that he was. So you said we don't know if he's a bad guy.
We don't.
I trust his wife when she runs off and says, "Please protect me from
What
this
if his
man."
wife said this man's
Prosecute
great? You
And
wouldn't
so-
trust her.
prosecute him.
And
That's
you're
insane.
acting like we don't know things. We do
Prosecute
know
him.
things. We know,
Prosecute him.
and so
Prosecute
at
him.
a minimum, what we know should be more than enough for anybody at this table to say, "Yes, please
Scott,
get
let me
him the
ask you
hell
this.
out."
Let me ask you
No,
this. Do you
the
think,
hell-
prosecute him.
let me ask you this. Do you think they charged him to try to save face? Yes or no?
This is what it looks like when you put someone with an IQ of 140 in a room to debate people with an IQ of 80. Scott Jennings. I hope CNN is paying him very well. But the Dems are still completely in support of this guy. Here's an AOC post from a few months ago. She's saying, but it's still up. She has not removed it. Kilmar Armando-Garcia has been sitting in a Salvadoran prison for over a month because the Trump administration made a mistake. The Trump administration made no mistake. The only mistake they made was they had a very weak immigration lawyer in district court, and that lawyer made a mistake. But the Trump administration didn't make a mistake about his deportation. That lawyer made a mistake in how she described his deportation, and Judge Paula Xinis, like a rabid dog, has bit into that inconsequential error by the immigration lawyer, pretends it's a fact when she knows better, just so she can retain false authority over this case. There was no mistake in the deportation of our good friend, Kilmar Armando Abrego-Garcia, as I've talked about endlessly. The supposed mistake was that he had an order of withholding that said he would not be sent to El Salvador, along with his final order of deportation, and that therefore sending him to El Salvador was a mistake. The immigration lawyer, by the way, always a bad idea to put an immigration lawyer, which is like a, compared to federal district court, immigration court's kind of retard court. Sorry, no offense to you immigration lawyers out there, but you're only dealing with a very narrow set of issues in immigration court. Federal district court covers everything. That's the major leagues. Immigration court is like, double A ball. And they took a double A lawyer and put her in front of a federal district trial court judge who was, of course, politically motivated to find any error on the part of Trump. And the judge said, well, he had an order of withholding to not be sent to El Salvador. Why was he sent to El Salvador? And the immigration lawyer was like, well, I don't know, Judge. No one explained it to me. That's what they're calling the error. The reason Kilmar Abrego-Garcia was picked up for his deportation to El Salvador was because he was a member of MS-13. MS-13 had just been designated by Secretary of State Marco Rubio to be a terrorist organization. So now our good friend Kilmar Armando Abrego-Garcia was a member of a designated terrorist organization. The moment that happens, the moment that designation is applied, and it's applied at the discretion of the Secretary of State. And by the way, Abrego Garcia had been adjudicated an MS-13 member 6 years prior in his initial immigration proceeding and appeal that resulted in his final order of deportation. So it wasn't Rubio who said this guy's an MS-13 member. The immigration court said that and affirmed it on appeal. All Rubio said was, if you happen to be an MS-13 member, you are now a member of a terrorist organization. That's entirely within the discretion of the Secretary of State of the United States. Well, he'd already been adjudicated a member of MS-13. MS-13 is now a terrorist organization. And guess what terrorists are not entitled to? An order of withholding from any particular country. So the order of withholding that Abrego-Garcia had received 6 years earlier, which had been valid, he could have used that for those entire 6 years. He lost it. It became null and void the moment he became a member of a terrorist organization, identified as a member of a terrorist organization, and then he was free to be sent anywhere, including El Salvador. So sending him to El Salvador was perfectly lawful. That the immigration lawyer did not understand this doesn't make sending him to El Salvador a mistake. It just means the lawyer was mistaken. Sending him to El Salvador was perfectly legitimate. But of course, the Democrats continue with this line that he was mistakenly deported. That's just not true. Now, AOC continues. The admin is defying SCOTUS and refusing to bring him back. If we allow Trump to violate Kilmar's rights, none of our rights are safe. Kilmar is all of us. Wait, we're all designated terrorists? We're all human traffickers? We're all spousal abusers? We're all interested in pornography of people who are not yet adults? I don't think I fall in that bucket, AOC. Do you fall in that bucket? And of course, none of Kilmar's rights were violated. He received all of his, the due process, immigration due process to which he was entitled. And he's getting a lot more due process now in federal criminal court because that's what he's entitled to now. Thanks for watching this highlight segment of our full-length Law Self-Defense live stream. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to give us a like and subscribe for more expert analysis on politics, law, and how to be hard to convict. And to watch the full-length episode of this show, just click right here. Stay safe.